The Tennessee Titans cut Xavier Restrepo on Tuesday, but that was far from the most shocking move of the day. I'll tell you who got cut and who made the team on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner. Make sure that you visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your bets. Now, on today's show, we are going to go over all of the roster cuts that the Tennessee Titans made. There are some surprises in there. We'll talk offense, we'll talk defense, who made the team. Also, we got to talk about who the Tennessee Titans should be picking up on waivers. I got a big list of players that I think the Titans should be interested in. I'm going to go over all of them. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. The season is less than 2 weeks away. The Titans are going to be making waiver claims over the next 24 to 48 hours, and I'm going to be here to break it all down with you. A lot of roster moves still ahead this week, folks, so make sure that you stay locked in with the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that in mind, the big news of the day, the Tennessee Titans did cut Xavier Restrepo. Now, we talked about it on yesterday's show that I thought this was probably likely. I thought Xavier Restrepo had a great chance to make this roster, and I thought if the Titans didn't keep James Proche around, that Xavier Restrepo would be on the team. But not only did Xavier Restrepo get cut by the Tennessee Titans, but the biggest shocker of the day, James Proche was cut as well. I cannot believe that James Proche did not make the Tennessee Titans initial 53-man roster, especially last week. John Bones Fossil, the Tennessee Titans special teams coach, said publicly in a press conference that he did not think Tyjae was ready to be the Tennessee Titans punt returner week 1. And the only other guy that made sense was James Proche. So the question becomes, who's going to be the punt returner for the Titans? Now, look, I think Xavier Restrepo is going to end up back on the practice squad for the Titans. I also think that James Proche is going to end up on the practice squad for the Titans. And I think what the Tennessee Titans are doing with James Proche is a little bit of roster trickery, is what I would call it. So, James Proche is a veteran in the NFL. He's been in the NFL for 4 years or longer. That means James Proche doesn't go on waivers and can't be claimed by another team. James Proche immediately becomes a free agent. What I think the Titans are doing is they're keeping a younger player on the roster because they're worried that that younger player could get claimed by another team. And I'll tell you who I think those younger players could be as we go through the offensive side of the ball. So what they're going to do is they're going to cut James Proche, let him become a free agent, all the while saying, hey, James, we're going to bring you back. Don't worry. We're bringing you back on the roster. But if we cut a younger player, like a David Martin Robinson, like a Brendan Crenshaw Dixon, somebody like that on offense, and that player gets claimed by another team, we lose that player forever. They could say, hey, Proche, we're going to cut you, but we're going to bring you right back on the roster later this week. So just chill in free agency for a minute. And they don't risk losing James Proche. So it's about risking players that can be picked up because they're younger players versus telling an older player, hey, we're going to mess with the roster math during the next couple of days, but we're going to bring you back. So the biggest surprise of the day was James Proche being cut by the Titans because who's going to be the punt returner? But I think if you wait a couple of days, James Proche is going to be back with the team, and James Proche will be the starting punt returner week 1. That's my guess right there. But with that being said, again, Restrepo and Proche were cut. It was a little bit of surprise, and that means that the Titans only kept 6 wide receivers: Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson, Bryce Oliver, Chim Dike, and Alec Iomanner. Again, the big surprises there with the 2 cuts, but I think it will all make sense in the coming days. Also on offense, the Titans kept only 3 tight ends, Chig Okonkwo, Gunnar Helm, and David Martin Robinson. That means that Josh Whyle was cut. I thought Whyle might be a placeholder for the Tennessee Titans as they go through waiver claims and things like that, but they had just had enough. Josh Whyle has been cut. He's gone. Not a great pick, and Gunnar Helm just completely erased him and the need for him off the roster. Now, let me say this. David Martin Robinson made the team. And David Martin Robinson, if you're not fully familiar, is more of a Chig Okonkwo type tight end. He's a move tight end. He's a good receiver. He's got good agility and good speed, but he's a little bit bulkier than Chig Okonkwo. Let me just say, Chig Okonkwo is a free agent at the end of the year. And I don't think that Chig Okonkwo, especially with the emergence of Gunnar Helm, is going to be a guy that the Titans want to pay a veteran contract to keep. I just don't think that's going to happen. So, if the Titans are so high on David Martin Robinson, which they are, and they kept him as tight end 3, there is a chance that David Martin Robinson could replace the Chig Okonkwo role in the Titans offense next year as Gunnar Helm ascends to tight end 1. Thomas Odukoye also cut. I talked about that on yesterday's show, the International Pathway Program reasoning. I wouldn't be shocked to see Thomas Odukoye back on the Titans practice squad as someone who they can elevate if they have a heavy tight end game plan going into a week. So tight end, wide receiver, quarterback, Brandon Allen, Cam Ward. No surprises there. Trevor Siemian cut. He'll be back on the practice squad unless the Titans find someone else. And there are a couple other options they might look at for their third-string quarterback. But I will continue to say, as I've said for weeks, the Titans are not out there hunting to upgrade their backup quarterback. They're not. They want Brandon Allen so that he can mentor Cam Ward. And if Cam Ward doesn't play, they're going to lose and get a better draft pick. So quit looking for backup quarterbacks. Brandon Allen is the backup quarterback. I've been telling you guys for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like, give it up already. Anyways. Moving to the running back position. Tony Pollard, Khalil Mullings, and Julius Chestnut. Tyjae Spears was placed on injured reserve. The rules changed this year in the NFL. It used to be if you put somebody on injured reserve before the 53-man roster was set, that player was out for the entire season. But the NFL added 2 spots where you could put a guy on injured reserve before the 53-man roster and then bring him back during the season. And Tyjae Spears got one of those designated to return IR spot. So Spears will be back after a month. Smart to let a guy who's had injury issues in the past to get fully healthy. But that puts a big-time spotlight on the running back position and the need for an extra running back. And we're going to talk a lot about that when I go over my waiver wire candidates at the end of the show, because I have a long list of guys I am very interested in for the Tennessee Titans on waivers. But finishing out the offensive side of the ball, 11 offensive linemen. I've been covering the Titans for now 7 seasons. I've watched the NFL, followed the NFL, and covered the NFL for work for 5 seasons. I mean, I've been watching the NFL for 33 seasons now, honestly. But I've been even covering the NFL for Locked On at large for multiple seasons now. I have never seen a team keep 11 offensive linemen. And this goes back, I saved offensive line for the end, because this goes back to my previous point about James Proche. If you cut Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, the undrafted free agent offensive lineman for the Tennessee Titans, if you cut him, someone else can pick him up on waivers, add him to their 53, or he could just choose to go to someone else's practice squad. With James Proche, if you cut Proche because he's a veteran, he could just wait on you to come back. So what the Titans are doing, in my opinion, is they're keeping Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon on the 53 to protect him from getting claimed on waivers by other teams. Let everybody set their 53-man roster, and then you cut Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon after everybody's practice squads are set. You slide him to your practice squad after other teams have used their waivers, and then you bring Proche back on the roster. That's what I think is going to happen. But again, 11 offensive linemen with your starting 5. Ali Udo, Jackson Slater, Corey Levin, Blake Hance, John Ojukwu, and then Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon. That's the offensive side of the ball. Now let's take a look at defense. And remember, I'm going to go over my best waiver wire options for the Titans at the end of the show. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now is the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm going to be playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, because Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. With the season kickoff set for September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy football. Again, so many different ways to compete. If you prefer the classics, you can get a crew together to play head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. Also, you want to play instantly with your friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. Also, they have the new Guillotine Leagues where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. And I think I'm going to do a couple Locked On Titans fantasy leagues with that Guillotine League mode. But the NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down the Tennessee Titans' first 53-man roster, the initial 53-man roster. We went over everything that I thought stood out on the offensive side of the ball. Now I want to go over the entire defensive side of the ball. And again, at the end of the show, I'm going to look at the best waiver wire possibilities for the Tennessee Titans. And boy, there are a ton of great options at positions of need. Now, looking at the defensive side of the ball, well, before we dive in, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Take the Locked On Podcast survey. We want to hear from you. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can find the link in the show notes. Thanks, everybody, for helping us out. But on the defensive side of the ball, not as much is surprising. Because the reality is there isn't a ton of good defensive talent for the Tennessee Titans. So it's not like there's a ton of surprise cuts or anything like that. We start on the interior defensive line. You have your big three of Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, and Sebastian Joseph Day. No shock there. But they do keep 5 interior defensive linemen, James Lynch and Timmy Horn. Now, looking at that group, Timmy Horn is the backup nose tackle for Tavondre Sweat. James Lynch is the backup 3 tech and 5 tech for Jeffrey Simmons and Sebastian Joseph Day. But I think Timmy Horn specifically, and I would include James Lynch in this, but Timmy Horn more importantly, he might not be on the roster for more than 24 hours. Like, Timmy Horn, to me, is a placeholder where the Titans have other options for nose tackle that they could look to pick up on waivers and replace Timmy Horn. So 5 interior defensive linemen, which is one more than I thought the Titans would have. But I don't think that Timmy Horn is a guy who's going to be around for too long. Where I did see a little bit of a surprise is at edge rusher. The Titans keep their big 3 of Arden Key, Draymond Jones, and Femi Oladejo. They keep Jihad Ward, the versatile, physical veteran who they picked up in the middle of training camp. But the 5th edge rusher is Jalen Harrell. I thought Harrell had been passed up on the depth chart by a guy like Ali Gaye. Ali Gaye is longer than Jalen Harrell. He's, a more versatile guy because he's taller and longer. But Jalen Harrell is a guy who can help on special teams significantly. He's a guy who plays with a ton of effort. At that point, I thought a guy like Desmond Evans. Desmond Evans got cut on Monday. I would rather have Desmond Evans than Jalen Harrell at this time, at least for size, physicality, and high-end upside. You look at a guy, again, like I said, Ali Gaye, I thought was a more intriguing option on defense. Now, what I would say to you is I think Jalen Harrell is the better special teams player than those players, and that's why ultimately he made this roster. But if we're talking about guys who I don't think are going to be around for very long, I don't think Jalen Harrell is going to be around for very long, but I think Jalen Harrell is a guy who the Titans would like to get back on practice squad because they can keep developing him as a draft pick from last year. And again, if they got to have special teams help, they can call up a guy like Jalen Harrell. So I don't think Jalen Harrell stays on the roster for more than 24, 48 hours, but I understand why they would want to kind of protect him in a way and hope to get him back on the practice squad. Now, linebacker, I was a little surprised. Again, top three. The Titans only have three good guys at any of these positions. But Cody Barton, Cedric Gray, James Williams, no surprise there with the top three linebackers. But I kept saying the Titans don't have a fourth linebacker, and I just left it blank. I just said, I'm just gonna keep three linebackers on the initial 53 with the understanding that I'm gonna add a linebacker on waivers, which will get me to four, which 4 linebackers is understandable. You can't go through a season with 3 linebackers on your roster. You need more than that. Not only do linebackers need to play, but linebackers are going to be big special teams contributors for you. So I wouldn't even be shocked if the Titans cut Curtis Jacobs as their 4th linebacker, brought in a different linebacker off waivers, and then brought in a second linebacker off waivers to have 5 linebackers because they're such a utility position for a football team with special teams factoring in. So a bit surprised that the Titans even kept Curtis Jacobs around, but the reality is I don't think that Curtis Jacobs is going to be around for much longer. Now, we move into the secondary. No real surprises for me in the secondary, especially at safety, but at cornerback, you get L'Jarius Sneed, you get Jarvis Brownlee Jr., you get Roger McCreary in the slot. You get Darrell Baker Jr. backing up L'Jarius Sneed, you get Marcus Harris backing up Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and you get Gabe Judy Lawley backing up Roger McCreary. Gabe Judy Lawley, again, an undrafted free agent out of 2024 out of Tennessee. I know a lot of you folks are Vols fans and you're listening in, so you know Gabe Judy Lawley well. I want Gabe Judy Lawley to stay around. I think he's a guy who ends up on the Titans practice squad for most of the year. But the reality is his cornerback is a spot where, especially that 6th spot, whether the Titans replace him with the 6th cornerback that they pick up on waivers, or whether the Titans just cut him to bring in a 5th linebacker, or to bring in a 6th interior defensive lineman, or a 6th edge rusher, or the Titans cut Gabe Judy Lawley to add in James Proche as the 7th wide receiver. I just don't think that Gabe Judy Lawley is going to be on the team for very long, but because he has some outside-inside versatility, he is a guy who I think the Titans would like to get back on the practice squad as well. But, going through the defense, I think a lot of these guys are not long for the team, so it's important to point out who I think could be replaced. Now, at safety, it's the 5 guys who I told you that it was going to be. This was one of the most obvious position groups, in my opinion, before the cut down started. You have Amani Hooker, you have Xavier Woods, you have Quandre Diggs and Kevin Winston, and then you have Mike Brown. Remember, I kept saying, Mike Brown, going to make this team because of special teams. He's a good 3rd or 4th safety if you need him to be out there on defense. And then on special teams, he's the personal protector for punt team. Which, if you don't know what the personal protector is, that's the guy who's calling the cadence for punt. The guy who's the closest to the punter in the backfield, and he's the one standing up saying, ready, set, who's basically the quarterback of the punt team. That's Mike Brown. And as a guy who was a personal protector on punt team for most of my football career, because I'm smart and I'm physical, so take some of that, haters. But as a guy who played personal protector, and shout out my guy Scotty Harrison, who I used to go against in middle school, used to light me up as an older player coming off the edge. Shout out to Scotty out there. A couple of concussions, I think, from those matchups. But, it builds character, folks. It builds character. A lot of my haters are out there saying concussions. Now it's starting to make sense with some of these takes. But all jokes aside, I think Mike Brown is important to the team. I think he's a valuable member on special teams. I think he's a really, really solid depth safety. If you guys have been listening to my show for any amount of time, you know that I'm high on Mike Brown as a depth player. I think the Titans could do a lot worse than Mike Brown as a depth safety, so no surprises there. Finally, the special teams trio. No shocks there either. Joey Sly, Johnny Hecker, and Morgan Cox. So that's your Titans' initial 53-man roster. But I don't think it's going to stay that way again. I think the Titans are going to be active on the waiver, and there are a lot of good options to choose from. As I go through my options of my list, want to hear what you guys have to say about some of these options. Let me know down in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. But with that being said, let's dive into those waiver wire possibilities. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here, folks, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. Look, doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether it's just a player prop, whether I'm hitting a money line, I want to build a same-game parlay, even do some live betting. I can do it all on FanDuel. And let me just say, FanDuel is the best looking app in the industry. I love the visuals. There's all these daily promotions that keep things fun. It's quick, it's easy to use, fast payouts, all of that, and tracking your same game parlay on FanDuel, the most satisfying experience possible. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, going over the Tennessee Titans' initial 53-man roster, my big takeaways at every single spot, but now is where things really get interesting. We got to look at the waiver wire because the Tennessee Titans are number one in the waiver wire, and I've explained this before, but if you're new and you haven't heard me explain it, the waiver wire in the NFL does not work like your fantasy league. You don't get to acquire one guy and then you go to the back of the list. The Titans finished last in the NFL last year. That means they are number one in the waiver wire all the way until week 4 of the NFL season. And it doesn't work where you pick up one guy, you claim one guy and go to the back of the list. The Titans can claim as many of these players if they want. If the Titans wanted to claim 30 players, they could claim all 30, and they would have the right to claim them before any other team. The Titans have right of first refusal for any player that is on waivers. And again, any player that's played less than 4 years in the NFL hits the waiver wire. Anyone who's played longer immediately becomes a free agent. All right? So, like if the Titans cut Calvin Ridley today, he wouldn't go on waivers. He could just go sign with whatever team he wanted. But if the Titans cut Chimdike today, he goes on waivers. Do you guys see what I mean? Anyways, moving right along. Let's go position by position here. Running back. Running back is the most important spot right now. I think the Titans can add somebody with Tyjae Spears going on injured reserve and with Kal-El Mullings not only being a rookie, but also being banged up. You guys know I'm not very high on Julius Chestnut. Mr. August, the preseason superstar. I don't think that Julius Chestnut is an NFL running back that needs to be on the NFL roster. So, a couple of guys became available. Audric Estime played for Notre Dame. Huge, big-bodied power back cut by the Denver Broncos. The Broncos have kind of a deep running back group, which is why a guy like Estime would be let go. But I just think that Estime is a perfect fit with what the Titans need. I said this on the Titans Squad show with Brad Hopkins and Julian Missinone. Tony Pollard is not thunder. Tony Pollard is lightning. Tony Pollard is a lightning-style back, not a power back. Tony Pollard was a running back wide receiver in college. I think people forget that because of how physical he ran last year and what the Titans asked from Tony Pollard. But they need a power back to go with the lightning back that Tony Pollard is. And Estime is absolutely a power back that can run downhill. I think he's a better runner than Julius Chestnut. I think his skill set fits perfectly with Tony Pollard for the time being. And when Mullings comes back and when Spears comes back, you can just get rid of Estime if you need to. But I think Audric Estime makes a ton of sense. And Damian Martinez, Cam Ward's running back from Miami. I like Damian Martinez in the draft. Let me also say, Ollie Gordon looking awesome for the Miami Dolphins. And a bunch of us, me and a lot of you guys who listen to me, we were pining for Ollie Gordon at the end of the draft. And now he's going to be good for the Dolphins. Very sad. But with that being said, Damian Martinez is a guy that I liked late in the draft as a power back who knows Cam Ward, is comfortable with him. I think either of those guys, Audric Estime or Damian Martinez, could be really good waiver wire additions for the Titans. Also, Khalil Herbert, who Herbert isn't going to be a waiver wire guy, but I would take Khalil Herbert over both these guys instantly. I would just go ask Khalil Herbert if he wants to be the Titans' number 2 running back right now and get 10 carries a game. I would go get Khalil Herbert right away if I was the Titans. But since he's a free agent, not a waiver guy, he will have his pick. But those are names that I would focus on right away for the Titans because running back is a desperate need, in my opinion. Not only that, but wide receiver. We talked about the return possibilities for the Titans and why it was kind of a shocker that James Proche was let go, considering the Titans don't have, another punt returner lined up. Well, what the Titans could have done is they could have seen a guy like Trey Palmer get cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they have so many. See, I've seen a lot of people say, why would we pick up all these dudes who got cut by other teams? They're obviously not good either. Guys, the Titans are the worst roster in the NFL. It is entirely likely that players 40 through 60 or 50 through 65 on a playoff team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Rams or the Ravens or something like that, it's incredibly possible that player 50 through 65 is better than the Titans 40 through 55. Like, this is the worst roster in the league. That's the point. So, yeah, these guys are being cut by other teams, but a lot of these guys are being cut by other teams that are better. And even if the entire roster isn't better, look at a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how much talent they have at wide receiver. They have Jalen McMillan and Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and Sterling Shepard. And now they had Trey Palmer. And, some teams just have really, really heavy position groups that have 7 or 8 guys who should be on NFL rosters. And then think about like the Titans linebacker group, where there's only 3 guys even worth it. There are some teams out there who have 5 or 6 linebackers who should be on NFL rosters, but they can't keep 5 or 6 guys on their roster. So don't be negative Nancy and be like, all these guys got cut, they suck anyway. That's an immature way of viewing it. Honestly, an uninformed way of understanding how roster management works in the NFL. But with that being said, Trey Palmer, the Titans could have cut James Proche because they want to go get a wide receiver who's a better wide receiver, who's a bigger wide receiver, who also can return. Trey Palmer has 68 career punt returns. Trey Palmer has 60 career kick returns. Go out and get Trey Palmer, Tennessee Titans. Not a question about it. That should be a move that the Titans should make. Now, there are some other wide receivers who became available, like Deontay Johnson, Malachi Corley. Those guys are locker room cancers. We don't want Malachi Corley. We don't want Deontay Johnson. A lot of people know that Deontay Johnson is a crap teammate after he quit on the Ravens in the middle of the game and he's been bounced around. Most of the general public knows about Deontay Johnson now, but trust me when I tell you, you don't want Malachi Corley. He is a locker room cancer, a me guy. You do not want Malachi Corley. At tight end, bring in Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich, former high pick tight end for the Broncos, went to the Giants. I think he led the preseason in touchdown catches. He can be a perfect backup for Gunnar Helm. He's a similar type player. Gunnar Helm's a better blocker, and Dulcich is more of a pure receiver. But look at Cincinnati's offense. They have a guy like Mike Gesicki, who they can use as a matchup guy. Gunnar Helm is going to be that for the Titans, but without Josh Whyle on the team now, they don't have anybody else who can replicate that skill set. And DMR is very similar to Chigakonkwo. Well, now you get Greg Dulcich, who's kind of similar to Gunnar Helm, and now you have a backup for both, and you can continue to develop Dulcich as a player in your offense. I would love Greg Dulcich on the Titans. Jelani Woods, the big, huge 6'7" tight end for the Indianapolis Colts, he was cut. That's a different skill set too because he's so big and physical, which the Titans don't really have. That would be an interesting option also. On the offensive line, Javon Foster was cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Javon Foster out of Wake Forest. I liked him coming out of college, or it wasn't Wake Forest, it was Missouri. He could play right tackle, he could play left tackle. He had over 3,000 snaps in college. I would bring him in if the Titans are looking to add an offensive tackle and they like him better in year 2 than Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon. And former first-round pick for the Patriots, Cole Strange, was cut by the Patriots, obviously. Strange has not worked out. He's not a first-round pick. But as a long-term replacement for Lloyd Cushenberry, I think Bill Callahan could get the best out of Cole Strange. So I would be looking at that as a possibility. On the defensive side of the ball, at nose tackle, Shai Tuttle was cut by the New Orleans Saints. Isaiah Foskey the snowman, or Tuttle was cut by the Panthers and Foskey was cut by the Saints, but edge. Braden Swinson was cut by the Patriots. I loved Braden Swinson this year out of LSU. He's technically refined. He's 6'3". I would have been okay if the Titans picked Braden Swinson where they picked Femi Oladipo. Now, maybe that's a bad call on my part because Swinson ended up being, taken so much later in the process. He might have even gone undrafted. So there may be something going on there behind the scenes that we don't know about. But for the Titans edge rush group, to have a guy who's polished right away, who can balance out Femi's rawness, I would love to get Braden Swinson in here. Gabriel Murphy, I think Brennan Jackson from the Los Angeles Rams could be an option. Linebacker. Chad Mumma, cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would bring him in as linebacker 4. Chris Paul, Pooh Paul from Ole Miss, who was just drafted. He was cut by, I think, the Rams. I would bring him in as linebacker 4 if the Titans are interested. And then finally in the secondary, at cornerback, Kobe Bryant from the Falcons, been a little banged up, but could be an option as a longer physical corner. Juju Brents, former second-round pick out of Kansas State, was cut by the Indianapolis Colts. The Titans took Daryl Baker off their hands and turned him into good depth. Go get Juju Brents and bring him in as depth for this cornerback room. He's an outside corner as well, which is what I think the Titans desperately need. Jalen Armour Davis, who is a former draft pick, 4th-round pick out of Alabama. He was cut by the Ravens. Again, the Ravens have a good, deep cornerback room. That's the type of big, physical outside corner that you go take a chance on. So those are the dudes that I'm looking at as waiver wire options for the Titans. I mean, there are plenty more that I would be okay with as well, that I would be interested in. But those are the names that really popped out to me before this recording. But with that being said, I'll be back tomorrow to break down all the waiver claims and all the news and how the roster has changed. That's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.